Cold calling strategies, winning more deals. Cold calling still works when you treat it like a system. Cold calling gets a bad rap because most teams run it like a random numbers game. But in B2B, the math still works when you pair the phone with tight targeting, clear messaging, and a repeatable process. The average cold calling success rate sits around 2.3%, which is exactly why spray and pray feels painful. The opportunity is that the teams who run cold outreach with precision consistently book meetings at 5 to 8%, and that gap is process, not luck. Buyers also aren't as allergic to cold outreach as people assume. Research shows 82% of B2B buyers have accepted meetings from sellers who proactively reached out, which tells us the channel isn't the problem, relevance is. When your call is well-timed, specific, and respectful, it reads as help, not interruption. When it's generic, it reads as noise. In this guide, we'll lay out the strategies we use to turn calls into qualified pipeline. What to measure, how to build lists that don't waste dials, how to run modern cadences, and how to structure calls so they sound human. We'll also cover when it makes sense to bring in cold calling services from a cold calling agency or SDR agency, especially if your AEs are drowning in prospecting. The goal isn't more dials, it's more conversations that turn into meetings and revenue. Measure what matters. Activity is not performance. Most teams track dials because dials are easy to count. The problem is that dials don't tell you whether you're improving list quality, connecting with the right roles, or running calls that earn next steps. Start with a simple truth. If the average rep makes about 52 calls per day with roughly a 7% connection rate, you cannot work harder your way out of bad targeting. You have to work smarter by lifting reach rate, conversation rate, and meeting conversion. Your baseline should be the real-world average. Across industries, cold calls typically succeed at about 1 to 3%, and the 2025 B2B benchmark is around 2.3%. That sounds low until you remember B2B economics. One meeting can be worth tens of thousands in pipeline, and 78% of buyers report having made a purchase at some point after a cold call. The point of tracking is to create levers so you can move from average to predictable. Once these KPIs are standardized, review them weekly by rep and by segment. If connect rate is low, you have a list problem, not a script problem. If connect rate is fine, but meeting rate is low, you have a messaging and call control problem. This is how high-performing outbound sales agency teams keep improvement focused and measurable. Your list quality is your ceiling. Great cold callers can't overcome a bad list. If your data is messy, your reps end up calling switchboards, wrong titles, or stale numbers, and your connect rate collapses. That's why the fastest way to improve results is usually upstream. Define your ICP, segment it, and build call lists that match each segment's triggers and pain points. List building services and B2B list building services aren't a nice-to-have in 2025. They're the foundation. A practical ICP refresh is collaborative. Sales, marketing, and customer success should agree on who buys, why they buy, and what changed right before they bought. Then you translate that into segments your team can actually execute, like VP Ops in manufacturing firms, 200 to 1,000 employees, versus anyone with operations in their title. When the segment is tight, your opener can be specific, your questions get sharper, and your conversion moves toward that 5 to 8% top team range. This is also where a specialized cold calling team can create outsized lift. At SalesHive, we treat data as a living asset. We continuously refine titles, validate direct dials where possible, and segment lists so each rep knows exactly who they're calling and why. Whether you handle it in-house or partner with a B2B sales agency, the rule is the same. If the list is generic, the conversation will be generic. Build a multi-touch cadence that earns answers. Cold calling works best when it isn't truly cold. A well-designed 30 to 45-day cadence makes your name familiar before the prospect ever says hello. That means coordinating calls with email and LinkedIn touches, so each channel reinforces the others, rather than competing for attention. This is why many teams pair B2B cold calling services with a cold email agency approach to keep messaging consistent across channels. Persistence is not optional. It's where most teams lose. By the third attempt, roughly 93% of conversations that will happen have already happened. And by the fifth attempt, it's over 98%. If your reps stop after one or two tries, you're essentially choosing to fail on purpose. The key is to make each attempt feel intentional, a new reason for calling, a tighter question, or a timely trigger, not just checking in. Execution also matters. Call at windows your buyers actually pick up, then follow quickly with a short email that mirrors your call's point in one sentence. When a prospect sees your name in their inbox and then sees it on caller ID, you're no longer a random interruption. Done consistently, the cadence becomes a compounding advantage that lifts connect rates, conversation rates, and ultimately, meetings. Cold calling isn't a volume contest. It's a relevance contest. You win with better targeting, smarter timing, and disciplined follow-up. Use a call framework that sounds human, not scripted. Most cold calling scripts fail because they try to force a pitch before earning permission. Instead, your reps need a framework, a clear opener, a relevance hook, 2 or 3 discovery questions, and a simple close that asks for a meeting, not a purchase. Frameworks keep quality consistent while still letting reps personalize. That's the difference between sounding prepared and sounding robotic. Call quality is measurable, and the best proxy is talk-to-listen ratio. Analysis of sales calls shows the most effective range is roughly 43% rep talk to 57% prospect talk. If your reps are talking more than they're learning, they're likely reciting features, guessing at pain, and triggering predictable objections. The fastest way to improve is to shorten the pitch and lengthen discovery. A modern opener should be direct and respectful. A quick intro, a reason you chose them, and a permission-based ask for 20 to 30 seconds. Then you transition into a question that invites the prospect to talk about their current process, priorities, or constraints. When the prospect is doing most of the talking, the meeting becomes the natural next step, not a hard sell. This approach is how high-performing cold callers turn average benchmarks into repeatable outcomes. Common mistakes that kill deals and how to fix them. The most common mistake is treating objections as something to overcome instead of something to understand. When a prospect says not interested, they might mean wrong timing, wrong person, or too vague. Train your team on an objection library with a few approved responses that convert pushback into clarity. The goal is not to win an argument. It's to earn a focused next step or disqualify quickly. The second mistake is giving up too early. If 93% of conversations happen by attempt 3 and more than 98% by attempt 5, stopping at 1 or 2 attempts is a pipeline leak you can literally quantify. Fix it with process. Your CRM and dialer should enforce follow-ups, and your managers should coach to attempt discipline, not just call volume. This is where a sales development agency mindset beats ad hoc prospecting every time. The third mistake is skipping coaching because everyone's busy. Record calls, review a handful weekly, and coach one specific skill at a time: openers, question quality, or the close. Teams that do consistent call review compound learning fast, while teams that don't tend to repeat the same weak patterns for months. Whether you run an internal SDR org or an outsourced sales team, systematic coaching is what turns decent reps into predictable performers. Optimization levers: research, tooling, and iteration. Once the fundamentals are in place, optimization is about small lifts across the funnel. A simple 3x3 research habit, 3 useful facts in 3 minutes, can materially improve personalization without slowing the team down. Benchmarks suggest the average call-to-meeting rate is around 2.5%. But teams using lightweight research can push that toward 3.3% and beyond. Over hundreds of calls, that difference is real pipeline. Tooling should support the process, not replace it. A clean CRM, a power dialer, and conversation intelligence can help you see exactly where calls break down and which messages land by segment. When you connect tooling to good operations, you can test variables like openers, voicemail length, call times, and follow-up emails in a controlled way. That's how you move from anecdotal best practices to proof. This is also where multi-channel execution becomes a force multiplier. If your cold email and phone outreach are aligned, each touch becomes more credible, and the prospect experiences a consistent point of view rather than disconnected spam. For teams that lack bandwidth, sales outsourcing can be a practical way to add process, technology, and testing discipline quickly. The best outbound programs are built, measured, and improved like a product. Deciding between in-house and outsourced cold calling. There's no single right model, but there is a right fit for your current constraints. If you have strong leadership, solid data, and the time to recruit and coach, building internally can work well. If your AEs are stretched, your SDR org is thin, or your pipeline goals are aggressive, partnering with cold calling companies can be the fastest way to add capacity and expertise. In practice, many teams run a hybrid: in-house for core accounts and outsourced B2B sales for targeted segments. If you're considering a partner, treat it like any other revenue investment. Ask for segmentation strategy, QA process, call recordings, KPI definitions, and how they handle list building and deliverability across phone and email. At SalesHive, we operate as an extension of your team with trained SDRs, dedicated strategists, and an AI-powered platform for testing, call tracking, and performance analytics. The outcome you're after is simple: more qualified meetings, clearer messaging signal, and an outbound engine you can scale without burning out your reps.